What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 1. Final look.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for this week's NFL slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay, so at the quarterback position, gave you Justin Herbert yesterday as a stud pick. Also liked Tua Tagovailoa. I think both of those guys in this game have a good chance at putting up a lot of fantasy points. Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 50.5 points scored in this game in a close game. They have the Chargers favored by 3. I think both of these quarterbacks are at a decent price and have monster upside. Now, Justin Herbert does have the better matchup, and there's a little bit of a question mark on Tua Tagovailoa coming off of some injuries last year. See how he responds to the first week of the NFL. So let's take a look here. Moving on from those picks, another play that I like at the quarterback position is Russell Wilson from the Denver Broncos playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So Russell Wilson averaged 16.1 fantasy points per game on the season last year. Didn't really perform all that well last year, but he did close out the season pretty strong, scoring 24 and 26 fantasy points in his last 2 games. Now he gets an average of 3.7 rush attempts per game, closed the season out with 8 and 4 rush attempts. So maybe they're going to give him more carries, more touches, more rushes. I think Russell Wilson, his strength is his rushing ability. So if he's healthy and he can rush the ball, that's when he's the dual threat. So he's $5,900 DraftKings salary. He's $1,400 more on FanDuel. Now, Vegas does think this is going to be a low-scoring game. Only 43.5 points scored in this game. They do have the close game with the Broncos just favored by 3.5. So I like that. And I do think there's going to be more points put up on the board than Vegas is giving it credit for. I think Russell Wilson is going to be able to put up 20 plus fantasy points in this matchup. Only going to be about 5% owned. So I think he's underpriced for his upside. Now, don't get me wrong here. He wasn't fantastic last year. So we'll see how it shakes out in week 1. So I like Russell Wilson here versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, speaking of the Raiders, he's moved on to the New Orleans Saints. Take a look at Derek Carr. And he's playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 6th worst defense overall, give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So Derek Carr, he averaged 15.9 fantasy points per game on the season last year. Got an average of 1.6 rush attempts per game. Going to be about 5% owned. His salary is $5,300 DraftKings salary, $1,700 more on FanDuel. Now Vegas does think this is going to be a low-scoring game. Only 41.5 points scored in this game. They have the Saints favored by 3. But it's a fantastic matchup. And I think Derek Carr, he's got those games where he just goes off and scores a bunch of fantasy points. Then he kind of comes back down to earth. Not a lot of consistency, but he could come out of the gate hot here in week 1. So I like Derek Carr here versus the Tennessee Titans. Okay, everyone, it's time to announce the winner of our weekly $25 PayPal giveaway. And the winner is Jimmy Shafe. Congratulations, Jimmy Shafe. You are the winner of this week's $25 PayPal giveaway. Please reply to our comment to collect your prize.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. So of course you got Christian McCaffrey on the slate, but take a look at Austin Eckler from the Chargers playing the Dolphins. And the Dolphins had the 7th worst defense overall. They were middle of the pack defending opposing running backs last year. But Austin Eckler averaged 22.5 fantasy points per game on the season last year, getting an average of 7.5 pass targets per game and 12 rush attempts per game. Going to be about 19% owned. He's $8,400 DraftKings salary, $600 more on FanDuel. Vegas does think this is going to be a high-scoring game, 50.5 points scored in this game. So I think this is a good game to stack. And you can pair Austin Eckler with the quarterback because he receives the ball. He gets, he's a running back and a wide receiver, averaging 7.5 pass targets per game last year. So he can catch a passing touchdown to get points for both the running back and the quarterback, Justin Herbert. So I like Austin Eckler here versus Miami Dolphins. So now I mentioned him yesterday, but I'm going to bring him up again. I got a comment that was saying not a lot of people are talking about Travis Etienne this week. So I'm going to talk about him. I like Travis Etienne from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Indianapolis Colts, who have the 12th worst defense overall, gave up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing running backs last year. Now, Travis Etienne averaged 13.1 fantasy points per game on the season last year, getting an average of 12.9 rush attempts per game and 2.7 pass targets per game. Didn't get the touches that I would have liked to see, but I think that changes this year if he can come out hot out the gate, which I think he can. So he's only going to be about 7% owned. He's projected at 14 fantasy points here this week. He's $6,900 DraftKings salary, $800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 46 points scored in this game, with the Jaguars favored by 4.5. See, I'm talking about Travis Etienne. All of a sudden, I'm getting excited. My game is on. I'm not making mistakes here in week 1, reading these players out and these picks to you. So I like Travis Etienne here versus the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. So, of course, a stud pick that I like, Justin Jefferson from the Minnesota Vikings playing the Tampa Bay Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Justin Jefferson averaged 23.5 fantasy points per game on the season last year, getting an average of 10.8 pass targets per game. Going to be about 13% owned. Now, I like this pick because he was on the field for 92% of the snaps last year. Super consistent. Projected at 20.7 fantasy points here in week 1. He's $8,800 DraftKings salary, $700 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Vikings favored by 5.5. So I like Justin Jefferson as a stud pick here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, dropping down in salary a little bit here, I like Keenan Allen in that game, the Chargers playing the Dolphins, that high-scoring game that I think everyone should get a piece of. And if you want to stack it, you could go with Keenan Allen. But I'll move on from him. Talked about him yesterday. Let's talk about DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks playing the LA Rams, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They were middle-of-the-pack defending opposing wide receivers last year. DK Metcalf averaged 13.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 8.3 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 8% owned, projected at 13.9 fantasy points here in week 1. Now he's got monster upside. He's 7,000 DraftKings salary, 700 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 46 points scored in this game, with the Seahawks favored by 4.5 or 4.5. So DK Metcalf ended the season last year scoring a 39 off of 13 pass targets. So he has monster upside. He is competing against Tyler Lockett for touches, but the beauty there is they got to cover both of these guys, and that's what makes these guys valuable. You could play one or the other, try to play whack-a-mole and see which one is going to go off, or you could do a stack with the quarterback and play both of them, because there are times that both of them go off throughout the season where they both get plenty of pass targets and plenty of production to meet their price tag. Now, Tyler Lockett, only 6,700 DraftKings salary and only 100 more on FanDuel. So Tyler Lockett could be the FanDuel play, and DK Metcalf could be the DK play. So either way, both these guys are in good spots. So I like both DK Metcalf and, of course, Tyler Lockett here versus the LA Rams. But let's take a look at another wide receiver that I like. If you want to come down in salary even a little bit more here, fantastic matchup.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
So I like Chris Olave from the New Orleans Saints playing the Tennessee Titans, who had the 6th worst defense overall last year, and they gave up the absolute most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. So Chris Olave, he averaged 14 fantasy points per game on the season last year, getting an average of 7.9 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 12% owned, so he's projected at 14.2 fantasy points here in week 1. He's 6,500 DraftKings salary, 800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 41.5 points scored in this game. They have the Saints favored by 3. So it's a good matchup here, and I think the price is right. He could be a star wide receiver by the end of the season if things go well. So I like Chris Olave here versus the Tennessee Titans. Okay, moving on to the tight end position here. I like TJ Hawkinson from the Minnesota Vikings playing the Tampa Bay Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends last year. So TJ Hawkinson averaged 13.1 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.6 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 13% owned. He was on the field for 85% of the snaps last year, projected at 12.5 fantasy points here in week 1. He's 5,900 DraftKings salary, 1,300 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Vikings favored by 5.5. So nice positional matchup here, and he's got monster upside. He scored 26 fantasy points off of 11 pass targets in the last game of the season last year. So I like TJ Hawkinson here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now coming down in salary, I also like Tyler Higbee from the LA Rams playing the Seattle Seahawks, who had the 8th worst defense overall last year and gave up the absolute most fantasy points to the tight end position. So Tyler Higbee averaged 8.9 fantasy points per game on the season last year, getting an average of 6.4 pass targets per game. That's pretty decent volume. That's really good volume for a tight end. And he's going to be about 7% owned. Was on the field for 87% of the snaps last year.
projected at 10.6 fantasy points here in week 1. He's 4,800 DraftKings salary, only 500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 46 points scored in this game, with the Rams trailing by 4.5. Kind of like to see that if the Rams fall behind by a touchdown or 2, possibly. Now you got Tyler Higbee in a fantastic matchup and a favorable game script. So I like Tyler Higbee here versus the Seattle Seahawks. If you're looking for a low salary tight end to save some salary, tight end that should get some targets and should get some volume. There's a couple of options, but let's go with Hayden Hurst from the Carolina Panthers playing the Atlanta Falcons, who had the 5th worst defense overall last year, gave up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Now, Hayden Hurst averaged 8.1 fantasy points per game on the season last year, getting an average of 5.2 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 6% owned, and he's only 3,000 DraftKings salary, 2,000 more on FanDuel, projected at 7.5 fantasy points here in week 1. Now, Vegas does think this is going to be a low-scoring game, 39.5 points scored in this game, with the Panthers trailing by 3.5. It's a great matchup, and Hayden Hurst was getting consistent targets to close out the season. 5, 6, and 6 targets in his last 3 games of the season. So I like that volume at only 3,000 DraftKings salary with a great matchup versus a team that's been known to let up a lot of points. So I like Hayden Hurst here versus the Atlanta Falcons.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.